Good morning, everyone. Namaskar. Good morning and welcome to the daily news analysis editorial edge that has been started by StudyIQ IAS English. If you have seen this or any of these videos or live streams earlier and yet haven't subscribed, well, now would be a good time to do it, okay? Because this is something that's going to continue for a long time. We are going to be doing this at least till next year prelims. So you will be advised best to actually tune in every morning 9 a.m. as this whole newspaper analysis will only be done in English language. All right? No English, no nothing here, there. It's going to be in pure English so that the interests of all students coming from all backgrounds, all linguistic backgrounds is best served. Good morning, Coder. How are you? Okay. So 5th of June, firstly, you must all be aware. If you are not, let me tell you, today is World Environment Day, a very important day, World Environment Day. Today, a lot of functions and activities will be taking place in central Delhi, okay? It's the hubbub of the whole, event thing. Good morning. Hi, everyone. Dance floor. Good morning. So you'll see a lot of events happening today, okay? Especially in Vigyan Bhavan in New Delhi. That's the ideal spot where all of these events come. Say probably the Forest Minister will come or the Prime Minister will come. And then they will address and talk about the issues of environment. However, you and I must also pay attention to the larger context. Okay? As I said, good morning. Altara Yeskar. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So, we have to pay attention to the larger context. So, essentially, I have 3 articles for you. Okay? All 3 related to environment because obviously it's World Environment Day. There's no point discussing anything else. I was tempted to discuss Kavach. But then I had done a live stream on the whole Coromandel Express incident on railway safety, and wherein I discussed a lot about what is Kavach and whether it could have indeed prevented this particular accident. So I thought it will be a repetition, so there's no point. World Environment Day, happy World Environment Day. Yes. But then again, we have to just move past just wishing each other and actually doing something about it, It has to come from an individual. The state can only make that many rules and all of that fining, levying taxes. Eventually, if you and I don't have a behavioral change, all of that is nonsense only. Okay. All right. So the 3 articles that I have for you is these 3. Are these 3 actually? What's wrong with my English today? Okay. So first one is 170 nations take the first step to end plastic pollution. So this is our first article. Obviously, we'll discuss about what plastics are, what plastic pollution is, circular economy, midstream, downstream, upstream, all of those concepts. Okay. And what exactly is this whole agreement about? There's something called a zero draft that you need to know. Again, a very simple looking thing, okay? UPSC will just simply ask you zero draft is being prepared by which organization? And then there will be 4. So we have a question actually. So have a look at it. Very important. Ecology, environment, from prelims perspective, it is so important. Why? Because Forest Service ko bhi select karna hai. People from Forest Service have to be selected. And obviously, you can't select Forest Service people just based on how much they know about modern history or ancient history. Obviously, they'll have to justify that, or else they would have completely made 2 different papers. So, which is why environment, ecology, geography, mapping, is extreme importance now. At least expect questions. Even if they don't come, you will be best served to know. You can incorporate those facts in your answers and all of that later. Okay. So, this is the first one. We'll talk about this whole agreement, zero draft. That is the whole thing that is being discussed. So we'll discuss about zero draft, we'll discuss about what India's approach is towards ending plastic pollution, how is it different from say the Western countries, specifically the EU, okay? And you'll understand why, because again our reality is completely different to their reality. So our approach is guided by our reality. Okay, so what's our reality? We'll talk about that. Thereafter we'll talk something about green jobs, okay? What are green jobs? Now these new concepts keep coming up. And they are important to know, at least from the point of view of mains answer writing. If you can incorporate these kind of particular topics and terminology, what ESG is, So you must have heard of ECG, electrocardiogram, heartbeat and all of that, okay. But what is ESG? How is ESG responsible to say CSR? Now, if these are completely new terms to you, we'll discuss, okay. Welcome dance floor. You will enjoy the class, you'll learn a lot actually. What I try and do is I just take 2-3 articles and then we go in depth. We'll discuss end to end from prelims to interview perspective. Everything we'll discuss so that you can come back and revise later if you want to. Okay. So we'll discuss green jobs and then we'll discuss about ESG, environmental, social and governance. What exactly is this? What are the connotations of ESG investing? Okay, very important, because again, it's to do with green jobs. It's to do with how we should plan for the future, how our labor force should be planned for the future, how companies, their outlook should also be planned for the future. Okay, because again, as I said, for a wholesome change, you need individual, you need laws, you need individual to change their behavior, then you need participation of industry, you need participation of NGOs, other stakeholders. So this is for the industry. Okay, this is what the industry should be looking at doing for, say, the climate-wise sustainable future. Okay, so we'll get started with the first one. This is the question that I have for you before we get into the topic. Have a look at it and let me know if you know the answer to this. Obviously, this is a previous year question that has been asked by the Honorable UPSC in the year 2019. Why is there a great concern about microbeads? So what are microbeads? Again, we'll talk about what microbeads are, what microplastics are. So what are microbeads? They are considered harmful to marine ecosystems, considered to cause skin cancer, small enough to be absorbed by crop plants, often found to be used as food adulterants. So we'll discuss. If you know the answer to this, yes, dance floor. Every day, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. on time I start. Okay, no delaying because I have limited time. I have time from 9 to 10 and I want to make the best use of it. Okay? So this is the question about microbeads, and this is the question that is related to today's lecture. So which of the organizations is related to the preparation of the zero draft? Now what exactly is zero draft? We'll understand. But then who prepares it? So the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, or the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programme, or the IUCN, or the World Plastics Council. If you know the answer without Googling, quickly let me know in the chat. Chat box is your best friend right now. All right. So let's begin firstly. World Environment Day. Before we come to plastics. World Environment Day. Okay. Important day. Where is the origin? Well, Stockholm Conference. When was Stockholm Conference held? 1972. Much before you and I were even born. Okay. So World Environment Day celebrated today. The host country for this year, Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast, correct. Ivory Coast. Okay. Again, a country where? West Africa. If you look at it, here it is, surrounded by Mali, Guinea, Liberia. But on the south, you have something very important called the Gulf of Guinea. It's in the Atlantic, by the way. Okay. So otherwise, it's surrounded by countries from all sides. Again, you need to know because UPSC loves asking these questions. Okay. Which of the countries border Ukraine? Expected question came. Which of the countries border Ivory Coast? Expected question might come. So, Ghana, Mali, Guinea, Liberia, and on the southern side, you have the Gulf of Guinea. Okay. Why I know Ivory Coast? Because I follow football. Okay. I like to follow football. And so they had an ex-footballer who was like one of the legends for a particular club in England. And now he is being projected as possibly the future president of this place. His name is Didier Drogba. Okay. So he's got so much of influence and so much of social work that he's done that he could be a future president of Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. So anyways, that's not very important, but then the geographical location at least have an idea. So the theme for this year, like on expected lines, solutions of plastic pollution. Even though the World Meteorological Organization, you must be aware, the WMO currently has come out with some very bad predictions that we will cross our 1.5 degree centigrade threshold very soon. And all of this will happen. But then the question that the World Environment Day right now is looking to address is plastics. Not landlocked. It has got a sea on the other side. On the southern side, you have got sea. Okay? So, this is the thing. We are discussing plastics in World Environment Day. Alright? Now, as I told you, World Environment Day comes from the Stockholm Conference on Human Environment in 1972. The meeting was held in 1972. The day was observed first in 1973. Now countries around the world, they will be essentially say putting forward a proposal saying that can we host the whole World Environment Day? And so then it is decided by the UN thing, the whole charter that they have, the whole organization that they have, they'll decide. Okay, a particular year we'll go to say Africa. A certain year we'll go to Latin America. India got this opportunity only twice till now. 2 times. 2011 and 2018. Just 2 times India has hosted the World Environment Day? New Delhi, I think, was the, okay, there's something wrong with this. New Delhi was the host venue, all right? New Delhi being the host venue for India, okay? Fine. So this is the whole thing. It is being observed today. It is being held in Ivory Coast, and that is all we need to know about World Environment Day. Stockholm Conference, 1972, first time held in 1973. That's all. Now coming to the topic, plastics. Since the whole thing is about plastic pollution, you and I will be best served to know about plastic pollution. But before we get into what plastic pollution is, we have to understand what plastics are actually. So again, the prima facie, the common layman might think that plastics is all to do about bottles, PET bottles, or say some cheap Chinese imports that kids will be playing with. So again, it's a lot more than that. Okay. So if you look at it, plastics are a group of material, either synthetic or naturally occurring. Now this is again important. So plastics can occur naturally is what the statement is telling me. So you might be thinking, well, what's the point then? If we are also producing plastic, if nature is also producing plastic, then how can you just like stop nature from producing plastic? Okay. So what you have to understand is, this is talking about natural plastics. Okay. So one example of natural plastics is something called chitin, or even say silk or wool. All of these essentially are water-based, and because they are polymers now. So what we'll have to understand is, what are polymers? Even DNA to a certain extent you can consider to be a natural plastic. Now important for us to understand that plastics can occur naturally. However, some examples are this: chitin, which you find in say the cell wall, So that is like the hard exoskeleton that you find, that is made of chitin. You will find it in say nail, we have I think caramel or something like that. So that is the whole thing. Chitin will be found in say hard exoskeletons. You have silk, you have wool, and even our DNA. It's a part of what you can consider probably very close to the definition of a natural plastic. Okay. And obviously synthetic plastic is what humankind has come up with, and we make in large quantities and then just like pollute the whole earth. So that may be shaped when soft and then hardened to retain the given shape. So obviously the whole point of plastic is that you can mold it in any shape for according to your needs, right? So now plastics are polymers, like I told you. The whole thing is to do with polymerization. So what are polymers? It's a substance made of many repeating units. Like I told you, look at DNA. One chromosome, another chromosome. See how DNA is formed? This helical structure that we talk about now, like this, this helical structure. So anything that is repeated to an ad infinitum, okay? The whole plastics concept is that you take one single unit and then you keep on adding to it, So that gives it the plastic form. That gives it the form of a polymer, right? So plastics can be divided into two general categories. Now you have thermoplastics and you have thermosets. Again, just know about it. You don't have to really mug about it. Therm, you will understand, is to do with heat, which means they can be melted and recast, right? Whereas thermosets, well, it's a polymer, irreversibly becomes rigid when heated. So thermoplastics can be reshaped. Thermosets, well, can't be reshaped. They become hard. Only difference. Simple ekdam. You don't have to learn more about this. That is all you need to know. Now a UPSC might ask you this question. So plastics can occur naturally in the world or in our environment. Okay. So many people might be tempted to say no. Well, plastics don't occur naturally, but in the sense their form, their polymers are found naturally. So you have examples like I gave you, silk, wool, chitin. All of these are examples of natural plastics. This whole polymerization process is happening naturally also. And obviously humankind is doing it, you and I both know. Fine? Okay, now we go forward and have a look. Please note this down though, okay? These are important examples. Chitin, silk, wool and DNA. These are probably forms of natural plastics wherein the nature is in fact engaging in that process of creating multiple loops of the same unit. Okay. Now let's go forward and have a look at what humankind has come up with. So we have come up with different forms of plastic. So first one that we have is PET. The PET bottles you must have seen. All this oil is stored or whatever. Water bottles, PET bottles we call them. So what is that? Polyethylene tetraphthalate. Okay. Fizzy drinks, water bottles, salad trays. So that's called PET. Then you have high density polyethylene. You need to know about this, PVC. What is PVC? PVC pipes, you must have heard, no? All these cinema stars will be saying, oh, put this pipe, it will last you 50 years. PVC pipe, durable, very long lasting. All of that is that only. Polyvinyl chloride. So you have pipes, fittings, windows, door frames, all of this made by plastics. Then you have low density, because obviously if you have high density, you will have low density also. Then the others are PP, PS and the others. Not very important, but in terms of examination, know about PET, PVC. Okay? Important, why? Because examination will just ask you the full form. Probably not UPSC. It's too easy for UPSC to ask this. But the state service, SSC, FSSC, all of that nonsense, other examinations, not nonsense, better good examinations, but all of the other examinations will ask you about the full form of PET, PVC or the others. Okay. Now let's go forward and have a look at why plastics are wrong. Why is it that you don't want plastics? So, the disadvantages of using plastics now. Okay. So they involve addition of additives like stabilizers or colorants. Alright. So again, which will lead to say some sort of cancer or say deformity in humans. Some problems in humans it might lead, because you have chemically rich stabilizers and colorants that are used. Okay. And then they are non-biodegradable. We know about this, that they are non-biodegradable. They take a long time. In fact, some research say that they do not decompose. They just keep there and they become like a choke point in the whole ecological system, which is why they are important. Okay. You must have seen how plastics will choke up entire systems. No? You will have say animals also feeding on plastics, and once they enter the food chain, then after that all bets are off. In fact, you know already that in the marine ecosystem, microplastics have been found in small fishes. Deep inside the earth, inside the sea, the whole oceans, you find that even the most, the sea variety or the fish variety that exists in the niche, even they have been exposed to microplastics. They found, I think, microplastics in the Mariana Trench also. So you can understand that it has become already a part of the whole process, ecological process, as well as our food systems. Eventually what? You and I are consuming that fish, which means we are consuming plastic, probably in small minute amounts. You are having water from plastic bottles. Obviously, some amount of microplastics is being consumed, which means that it is going to have long-term effects, which is why it is important for humans to come up with a system wherein you can minimize at least the use of plastics, if not completely ban it. And why it can't be banned and why is plastics also important is important for you to realize, because that is India's perspective. Okay. So when we come to that draft negotiation as to what did India say, you will understand that India takes a look at the whole of this in a completely different manner. We'll come to that also. So plastic materials clog waterways, oceans, seas, marine mammals, like I told you, found entangled, plus they have entered in food chain also there. All these poor fishes are having microplastics now. Okay. Eating food out of plastic containers, don't have that. If you do, don't drink from plastic bottles, maintain a glass bottle at home, especially for say expecting mothers. Never let them have water from plastic bottle. Exceptionally bad idea. Give them like a Borosil bottle or something to drink with, or like a brass bottle. Brass you get, no, or a copper one, sorry. Get all of that. But then obviously consult the doctor before you take these decisions. But then plastics you should avoid. Do not at least do that. So again, many animals, you see the cows on the road, poor fellows will be having plastic. Okay. Few additives such as phthalates may cause serious hormonal imbalance. Like I told you, plastics also affect the health directly. Obviously, one thing is to do with the food chain, but then the direct intervention is also very, very important. So now that you know the disadvantages, that since they are so bad, okay, but then what are the advantages? Obviously, we came up with a plan, no? which is why we started using it. It had some utility for us. Okay. So the story so goes that obviously since ancient civilization, people have been introduced to rubber. And in fact, rubber also is a natural plastic. If you look at this whole list, no, you can include rubber also. The story so goes that they found rubber initially. Okay. And so they figured out that it has a lot of utilitarian purpose. Then there was some American fellow. So he came up with this vulcanization process, the vulcanization of rubber, essentially adding sulfur to it. Okay. Again, note this down. If it's important for you to note all of this in just one line, if you have to remember for the examination. So this fellow came up with rubber. Obviously, this was known to ancient civilization. Then one American fellow, not important to remember the name, he came up with the process of vulcanization, which is essentially addition of sulfur. Now, once you have added sulfur to rubber, what happens is the rubber becomes durable. It gains strength. Okay. So now you are able to use rubber not just say as a product that you gain naturally, but you can have say usages across from tires, bicycle tires to say aircraft tires. They all are vulcanized to a certain extent. Why? Because the impact of or say the different forces acting on it. So you and I, when we ride a bicycle, limited amount of force. But then imagine like a Boeing 737 or an A320 using the same rubber, it will burst, no. So they'll require different sort of vulcanization levels. So that is to ensure the durability, the strength, so that it can withstand the impact and the different forces that are acting on it. Okay. So this is again, just remember this, important for you to know vulcanization process. So the advantages now, why are we using plastics exactly? So obviously it is versatile. Like I told you, look at the example of this only, the tires. If you take an example of this only. So they are versatile, they are sturdy, strength, lot of strength is there. Okay. Difficult, you try breaking a PET bottle with your hand, the cello ones at least, not the Indian Railways one. Yeah, the cello ones, so they're difficult, they test your strength. Okay. Then after that you have safety wise, it's okay, you can use it. Not from the health wise, but from the safety of the liquid that is stored in it. Yeah, you can secure it for a longer amount of time, for sure. Okay, it is lightweight also, which is why you and I use it frequently. Which is why most of us don't use glass bottles. Why? Oh my God, it will be heavy, it will break. How will I carry it to office? It's heavy also. Why use plastic? So it's lightweight, I can just carry it in my hand. Right now also look at this, even though I'm preaching about plastic, here I've got plastic bottle in my hand. So look at this, this is how humans behave. Okay. Thereafter, it is longevity you have. Okay. It works for a longer amount of time. Okay. And then the final best use of it is that it is resistant. It does not react. So it is resistant to water, chemicals, or whatever you store in it. Obviously, if you store acid in it, corrosive action, then it will completely break down. But then most of the liquid, it can handle aram se. Okay. So this is the disadvantage and advantage of plastic. Now that the theory part has been done, you know about World Environment Day, the theme of World Environment Day, you know about plastics, polymers, natural plastic, synthetic plastic, and you know about advantage and disadvantage of plastic. Now we come to the article, because this was necessary to be explained before we came to the article. So the article for the morning. Excuse me. So talking about this zero draft now. So the organization that has come up with United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP. Okay. So the UNEP has come up with this particular draft. All of these fellows, good, intelligent people, they were meeting in Paris. Okay. Which is why I thought it is pertinent to introduce and include this today. So they were sitting in Paris, they were meeting, and the agreement is there to prepare a draft text only. The zero draft is that suppose you are a country, I am another country, and all the others are countries here. We all agreed that, okay, now we agree on preparing a text which will become the fundamental basis of an international treaty. Okay. That is it. They have agreed to agree. Basically, that nothing has been finalized now. What they have only agreed upon is that yes, there will be a text which will be put forward in the third session. This one in Paris was the second session of the INC. Now you'll ask, what is INC? Okay, the INC is the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. Note this down, please. Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. So this is a committee that was formed. They were sitting in Paris, having croissant and coffee. And then they decided that we'll agree to disagree. Agree to agree. And then in the forthcoming meeting, the third meeting that is to be held in Kenya, we will put forward this text for consultation. Okay, that we'll all sit down and we'll then discuss how should this document look like. But then that fundamental basis will be prepared, a sort of preamble to the international treaty will be prepared. Understand it that way, that they've agreed to prepare a preamble. So now the decision has been taken at this meeting of the INC. Why is INC important? Now the questions that can be framed from here. So we know that INC, Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, is to do with UNEP. If you have been following my lectures, my classes every morning 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., then you will know that there is something also I have discussed in the previous 2 days called the IGN. Okay, again, Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee only, but different name. And this is to do with the UNSC reforms. Now this, my dear friends, becomes a very good question for UPSC. What they will say? 2 options, okay? What they will essentially do, the intelligent people of UPSC, they will say group 1 and group 2, okay? INC, IGN, UNEP, UNSC. Which of the above are correctly matched? 1, both, neither, none of the above, whatever. So you need to know the small details. So the UNEP has come up with INC. IGN is to do with United Nations Security Council reforms. Okay. So the zero draft that they have agreed to write will be put forth in the forthcoming meeting in Nairobi. Right now they met in Paris. Soon in, I think, December, they will meet in Nairobi. What a job. Yeah. What a job. Yes, correct. None correct. Both are interchanged. What a job, no? Just you are sitting and consulting and traveling all places across the world. So they are meeting in Nairobi, in Kenya. And so this will become the fundamental basis. What will become? The zero draft by the UNEP, which will become the fundamental basis, essentially the preamble. It will become the preamble for countries to enter into negotiations to finalize the global treaty. Treaty on what? Plastics. That there should be a way to confront and combat and minimize the use of plastics. Okay. So the treaty on plastic pollution will also cover marine environment. You cannot have a conversation on plastic pollution without including marine environment. Like I told you, it has gone deep inside Mariana Trench also. So if you do not address this whole marine pollution at least, you are not addressing the whole concept of plastic pollution. If you just limit yourself to land, what's the point? What have the poor fishes done then? Again, UPSC will ask you this, that the treaty is to do with on, say, land only. Something like that they'll use, this some kind of term like only or something somewhere. So you have to know it is to do with land as well as rivers as well as marine, everything, the whole concept. Everywhere you can find on earth plastic pollution, that treaty will cover. Okay. So now let's go forward. What else has they said? So now we come to our dear country. What was our position during this whole treaty, this whole zero draft formation that was happening in Paris? We also sent representatives. So India advocated for a consensus-based approach. Please understand, anywhere, wherever India goes into negotiations or in the global stage, it always talks about participatory approach. You look at Ukraine, it is talking about let's have dialogue. If you look at some of the other so-called big countries, they will be taking sides. Oh, Vladimir Putin should do this. Oh, Zelensky should do this. India is like, you both should do this. What you should do is talk to each other. So that is one very fundamental thing that you should remember. That India's approach is always, let's talk. Let's have a participatory approach. There is no point, say, blaming and naming each other. No point. Okay. So consensus-based approach is what we said. Whereas these EU countries, these developed nations, and I've used developed in apostrophe because clearly development is more to do than just economic growth. Okay. So these developed countries said, no, let's do it through majority vote. Okay. Why? Because again, it's time saving for them, plus they have influence. They'll have bigger say in, say, making sure that the rules of the treaty are to their convenience. Whereas India is like, no, we should make sure that that treaty serves the interests of all the countries, not just the Western world. Example of India becoming the voice of global South. Okay. Points that you can include if you are given an essay. Okay. That India is the voice of global South, some tangent. Points to include, good points to include that no one else will. How India facilitates a participatory approach to the global conversation. How it is against, displaying a unilateral thought that, okay, it is only my way is correct and your way is wrong. No, India never does that. Okay. So India and the other developing countries, which means the global South. So India plus the global South, they came together and said that consensus-based approach will ensure inclusivity, and that is how global agreements are done. Okay. That you cannot bully your way to get an agreement. That is not the way forward. Everyone has to be taken on board. Now look at this, is very important, guys. Very, very important. Make a note of this, please. Again, if someone needs these PPTs, if you want them for your revision alongside your daily whatever studying you do, you can just drop me a mail. I'll also be starting my Telegram channel. This is my email ID. Drop me a mail and I'll be happy to forward them to you. Okay. However, I'll also be starting my Telegram channel probably in a couple of days, wherein I will be sharing the complete PPT plus important articles that I find, important information that you should know. Okay. No personal advertisements there. That I am having coffee in Starbucks and all of that. None of that. It is going to be completely study approach based. Okay. So now this is important. Have a look at this. What is wrong with the pen today? Okay. Never mind. So India rejected suggestions for phasing down polymer production. India said, polymer, the papa of plastics. So India said, well, we cannot reduce this. Okay. There is no point reducing this. Plastics are not the problem. This is what India said. Indian perspective, plastic is not a problem. Plastic litter and pollution is. Now, why did I do the theory? Because plastic is a lot more to do with than just say PET bottles and this and that. Plastics is also to do with rubber. It is also to do with aircraft wheels. Okay. So India is saying, well, it's not just to do with plastics, but plastic pollution. Can we find a way to address that particular issue? The rest can be taken care of. Very important. India is focusing on what? The downstream aspect of plastic pollution. Now you might be confused. What is downstream action? Or what is this downstream action or downstream angle that I'm suddenly talking about? Okay. So we'll quickly go into what downstream, upstream and midstream are. Very important, especially from the exam perspective. I would suggest at least have an idea. The name itself is self-explanatory, so you will remember, you don't need to worry. So, but then make a note of this, that India's approach is on downstream. Okay, just write this down. India's approach is downstream based. Now, let's go back and have a look. What is the difference between downstream, upstream and midstream? So, plastic comes into existence as a material, like I told you. As soon as you polymerize, that becomes a plastic. The process of polymerization, the product that comes after that, plastic. So now for this reason, polymerization is the natural starting point for any global agreement, the beginning of the life cycle of the plastic. Beginning of the life cycle of the plastic. What's the life cycle of plastic? So you form a plastic, you design it, you use it, and thereafter you throw it. This whole life cycle from birth to throwing is the life cycle of the plastic. Now, if you understand the life cycle of the plastic, you will quickly understand what is called the circular economy also, or the circular life cycle of plastic. Okay. What the whole thing is very important and easy to understand, guys. 2 minutes I'll take of you, you will understand. So first let's do this. we'll discuss circular economy after that. So the beginning of the life cycle of the plastic, and you have 3 stages. Okay, from birth to the death of plastic, 3 stages. Number 1, upstream, which means the production and consumption of virgin plastic polymers. Please make a note of this. The production as well as the consumption, not just production but also using it, of virgin plastic polymers is upstream. Thereafter you have midstream, which is to do with design and use. How are you using the plastic? How are you designing the plastic is to do with midstream. And downstream is to make sure that it is recycled, how it is thrown away. So, waste management. So, India's approach is number 3. Okay, India is swing. Let's look at number 3 only. That is the problem area. The other 2 are not. Why? Because understand it from the Indian perspective. If you get into a treaty that tells you that, well, you have to take care of all of these 3. Okay, then what happens? You have industries that are currently, India has got, say, companies that are involved in upstream production. Some are involved in midstream production. They have nothing to do with, say, how plastic waste management is to be done. They are following the norms and rules according to the plastic waste management rules of 2016. You have an industry in place. Why should you disturb that industry unnecessarily? The problem is in downstream. Let's address that. That is what India is saying. Okay? Cool. Now let's go forward and understand circular economy. So firstly, before we come to that, so like I told you, the life cycle of a plastic. So you have the birth of a plastic, the use of a plastic, and say the death of a plastic. So you throw it away. So this becomes a linear fashion, a linear model, a linear model of using plastic, that you are not taking care of this thing, that can you, after throwing it, reuse it and make it into another usable form of plastic. So if you are able to do this, bring it back, then that becomes a circular model or use of plastic. Whereas if, like what you and I do, we get a bottle, we have it, throw it. If you are not recycling it, it's linear. It's not going back, no. Now you eventually, there's something that needs to be done of that thrown bottle. What will you do? Eventually, you have to either recycle it, or it will continue to not degrade in the ecosystem and become a choke point. So circular economy is to do with that. So just quickly note this down. If I want to draw it by a diagram, let me find space where I can draw a diagram. Just note this down here with a diagram. Best way to understand this. Okay. For circular, just note down a diagram here. Since I'm just finding space, so we'll just note this down here quickly. Okay. So you have, say, green products. Okay. Fine. Green products will go into cleaner production. No, you are using a better process, efficient process for the green products. Okay. Then you have, say, because you have cleaner production, so you have better service to individuals. It's of better use to individuals. Right? Thereafter, you go into recycling these products. And because they can be recycled, they are green products. So this essentially is the circular model, that you're able to use it. Okay. And why is India's approach only towards the downstream? Because it does not want to unnecessarily go into areas where there is no problem. There's a saying in English, don't fix something that is not broken, which is India's approach. The problem of upstream and midstream, that is not broken. The problem is in downstream. You do not know how to address the problem of plastic waste management. You do not have technology to make sure that that happens on a pan-global basis. Okay. So which is why India's approach is consensus-based and focused on the downstream aspect. India's focus is on making sure that circular use of plastic or circular model of plastic waste management becomes a reality. This is your central idea, on which in mains you can probably write, say, around 100 words. Include why the plastic waste management rules of 2016 are important. They were recently amended in 2022 also. So you must have seen 50 micron of plastic, you can't use more than that. 50 micron is the maximum. So why? Because more than that it will not degrade. So biodegradability is the most valid concern when it comes to plastics. It should either be biodegradable or you should be able to recycle it. These are the only two ways. Okay. So now let's go forward and have a look at this. So the INC, the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee of the UNEP. So now they have a legally binding agreement. This is what it is the whole thing about. This treaty. This legally binding agreement is what? A treaty. Absolutely. Creating awareness is the only way. For you and I at least. For you and I, a behavioral change has to come, guys. Eventually, you can only blame the government and municipality that much. Okay. Eventually, we are 140 crore also. Please understand. It's difficult to satisfy everyone. So there needs to be a behavioral change. See how today, at least it's very heartwarming to see. So 10 years ago, you would not have found cars giving pass to an ambulance. Okay. Then government came up with this rule also that if you don't give pass, you'll be fined also. And then there was a massive campaign that was launched. And today it has become like an instinct. As soon as an engine comes, a fire engine or an ambulance or a police vehicle, everyone gives pass. At least for ambulance, I've seen everyone goes like, the whole road is cleared. So it's a behavioral change that happened. You can have so many rules and you can have that many things. But a good example is how road safety, you had a good campaign backed by rules, which eventually brought in behavioral change in the individuals. So as simple as that. Same thing for plastics. You have a rule in place, a campaign leads to be launched, and eventually that should lead to a behavioral change. Because if you and I don't change, nothing will change. There's 100 rules you can frame, nothing will happen. Okay. So the whole point is that by 2024, this treaty should be ready and it should be opened up for ratification to the member states by 2025. Two important dates. Finalization of the treaty, 2024. Ratification of the treaty, 2025. Right now, zero draft is to just make sure that the treaty, the fundamental basis is prepared for the treaty to be negotiated upon by September, October, November, whenever it is, the third meeting that is to happen in Nairobi, Kenya. That is all you need to know. If you know upstream, midstream, downstream, done. If you know plastic waste management rules, done. If you know India's approach towards this whole negotiation, set. Good answer for mains, required. All ingredients ready. Go ahead, write a good answer for 200 words. Take maximum marks. Okay, that's simple. You require 45 minutes of intense study just in plastics to have that angle covered. Okay. So the resolution addressed the full life cycle of plastic pollution, like I told you. From birth to death, that whole thing has to be seen, including its production, design, disposal. World's plastic pollution is forecast to nearly triple. See, if you don't address this, we are dead, guys, in the long run, for sure. Or at least we'll have some mutant species of humans come up in the near future, the way it has entered our food chain. We'll become like one of those transformers or something, I don't know. Okay, so we have to address this. Absolutely important. Circular economy, please make sure you take a note of this also. I've drawn you a very weird looking diagram, but you should be able to understand the gist of this. I'm not very good with diagrams, so you can understand that now. Okay. Now that this has been done, any questions on the whole draft, the zero draft? Any questions, anything at all? Before we go into the second topic, I have around 15 minutes, so that's more than enough. Any questions on say the whole plastic waste management or on India's approach? Any questions? I'll appreciate that. I'll just wait for 30 seconds. Okay. If you do have any particular questions, or if you have any particular doubts that you'd like me to address, you have my email ID. Drop me a mail. Many people have, in fact, dropped me and reached out to me. And we have been discussing. I enjoy interacting with students. Since I am a student myself, I like to read every morning. And in my 10 years of service experience, that habit that started during UPSC days has continued. So it's, I still consider myself a student only because it's just fun to be a student. Just read, analyze policy, figure out what India is doing, why it is doing. So I enjoy all of that. If you want to discuss, drop me a mail. All right. So now let's get to green jobs. What are green jobs? What exactly is the whole conversation around green jobs? So this article is from the Financial Times. You can have a look. I think it's in today's newspaper only. The Financial Times is discussing this. And like I have told you, in this whole series, I look at articles not just from Indian Express, The Hindu, but also articles from FT, ET, ORF, Down to Earth, Aeon Essays, all of that. Okay? Because if you limit yourself to just one newspaper, clearly this year's prelims must have told you that is an incorrect strategy to have. Okay? Obviously, Hindu Express is desired, expected, prerequisite. But then at the same time, it does not hurt to know different perspectives, different articles. So which is why I make sure I do this. This is the only thing. Two things different about this whole series. One, complete English, and two, varied resources. I don't limit myself to IE Hindu because that is being done extensively. Okay? So the India's net zero target for 2070, you must be aware that we have gone for a net zero target by 2070, China by 2060. Okay? The European Union by 2050, all of these nations have set themselves targets that we will become a net zero country by that time. So India has become a target. India has a target of 2070. Okay, and which is why you will see that you have a lot of green initiatives that are taking place in different sectors. Railways, I have discussed extensively how railways has come up with the whole electrification drive, moving away from fuel and coal and going to say electric power as a source of power for their engines. Yes, that is happening. Except I think in the Konkan coast, if you, in fact, it's very important. If you have been to Goa or if you are planning to go to Goa, okay. So when you go from Goa to Mumbai, okay. So in the whole middle journey, it's actually very scenic. On the right side, you will have Arabian Sea, and you are going through the Western Ghats. Okay, amazing to see, in fact. And the whole thing is that at that particular stretch, because you are eventually having to haul such huge weight over an elevated incline, you need a sort of, it gives more power if you have, say, diesel power engines. Okay, so which is why in certain areas, Konkan coast, near Mangalore also the same thing is there. If you go to the northeast, obviously that is still pending because obviously the lines are being laid right now. Coverage is being ensured. After that, the electrification drive will start there. So these are the targets India is picking up in different sectors. Railways, I am giving you a small example. Others also, it's happening a lot. You have, say, sustainable material that is being used for laying roads now. Okay, they are recycling plastic to lay roads. You must have heard and seen of it. Why is all of this happening? Because India has a target to meet by 2070. Okay. So what does this article say? That it calls for a remarkable shift in the corporate landscape. So all of the rules is fine, you and I as individuals are also fine, but then business also has their own share of responsibility. Okay. So look at it from the point perspective of, if you're talking about, say, conservation or ecological conservation, one perspective is the individual perspective. The second is the, say, nation state perspective. And the third is the business perspective. Okay. Essentially, you are looking at a multi-stakeholder approach. If India is to get to 2070 targets, okay, just focusing on rules, just giving the ecosystem is going to be not enough. You need individuals to have a behavioral change. You also need businesses, industry also, to have a behavioral change, to make certain changes. So, it will impact hiring practices with green jobs. So now what are green jobs? Please write this down again. Important. New concept, and UPSC loves new concept. So green jobs. Okay. What do they include? Number one, sustainability. Oh, we have written it here, so I don't have to write this. Okay, all of this. So what are the green jobs? Number one, sustainability manager. Okay. So again, for those of you who are not appearing for UPSC but want a good, cushy, safe career where you will not get fired, well, look at these kind of jobs. Okay. Prepare for these kind of jobs at least. The AI will, okay, fine. AI is there till a certain extent. Eventually, if the environment is not there, what AI? Okay. So green jobs, sustainability manager, environmental science, policy knowledge, economics, finance, all of these. Because they're interlinked, no? Like I've told you, any environmental problem is a human problem, it's an economical problem. It's a problem of economics. So environment and economics are inherently linked together. Environment and politics is inherently linked together. Environment and you and I are inherently linked together. So any change in environment will have changes here also. Okay? So this is there. Then you have social impact manager, which is essentially to do with stakeholder engagement. Someone should be there to make sure that the government, the business and the individual are on the same page, that they are working towards a similar agreement. Yes, yes, Nalajana, correct. Correct, I agree with you. Hill areas electrification, correct. I agree with that. There are difficulties, absolutely. It's to do with terrain, it's to do with geography. Yeah, it's just impossible to have electrification across the country given the kind of difficult terrain we have. Some people don't realize before criticizing how big the country is. 50 kilometers you travel and you see so much of change. The whole landscape changes, people change, culture changes, food changes, music changes, everything changes. So the diversity of this country is obviously our biggest strength, but then it's also a weakness in terms of ensuring services delivery to each and every individual. It's a challenge that you have to overcome. Yes. So we need to be fair in our criticism at times. Obviously, no one is saying the government is all proper and correct. Obviously, you should question the government, but then at the same time, you should understand that if you were in their position, you will be faced with the same problems. Do you have a solution to offer? If no, then what's the point? Okay. So social impact manager, someone to make sure that all of these individuals are on the same page. Then an ESG analyst. What is ESG now becomes important for us to realize. New term, ESG. So ESG is to do with three things: environment, social, and governance. Like I told you, any problem in environment will have problems in other sectors also. Okay, it's linked essentially. So you have ESG, the full form of which is environment, social, governance. So you need an analyst for that: sustainability reporting, strategy, skills, asset management, all of that. Okay. You need to analyze the outcomes of your efforts, no? And for that, someone should be trained enough to understand, say, how is carbon sequestration different from, say, carbon, whatever else. Three terms they can think of. Someone should be at least aware. Okay. Can our current system in place ensure that kind of awareness? No. You need specialists. A generalist can't do justice to the same thing with the same gravity as a specialist can. So this is a specialist that you're looking at, an ESG analyst, a compliance specialist, someone who has to submit an action taken report. Okay, if this was the policy, if this was the funds allocated, what were the outcomes? So someone should be aware of that whole process. So these are green jobs, guys. Renewable energy expert, green supply chain manager. Look at it, they're looking from the whole supply chain management perspective. Okay, if you look at it from the supply chain management perspective, you're looking from the source to the final product. And all things included in middle are part of green jobs. Okay, right from extraction of the idea to the final ideation, from ideation to the product creation and possibly disposal also. Green jobs. Okay, so now let's quickly understand ESG. Like I told you, it is to do with businesses. It is to do with industry. Okay, what should the industry do now? Okay, what is ethical investing? You must have heard, no? Ethical investing, what is it? So very small example. If I am, again, just to continue in the same thought that I have been teaching in this live series. So if I am a European Union investor, okay, and I have two choices. One, to get cheap goods from, say, Xinjiang area of China. And two, to get relatively higher goods, higher price goods from India. What would be ethical investing? An ethical investor will be like, I'll get the goods from India because, well, there is a regulatory system in place. You know that the product, the labor laws are being followed. People are getting paid for the hard work that they have done in making the product. So it's an ethical product. Okay. An unethical investor will be like, oh no, forget the human right abuses in China. Forget that the whole population is being exterminated. Forget that women are being abused. Okay. All of that is not important for me. My only thing is profit margin. So I'll get the products from China. I'll get the product from Xinjiang area of China. Unethical investing. Okay. So ESG is to do with ethics in investing. So environment, social and governance investing refers to a set of standards for a company's behavior used by socially conscious investors. You have to be conscious, like I told you, between Xinjiang and between a factory in Bengaluru. Well, if you choose Xinjiang, you are not socially conscious, you are unethical. But if you choose from Bengaluru, yep, good. There is a whole regulatory system in place. So environmental criteria consider how a company safeguards the environment, including policies addressing climate change. Now examples, how it manages relationship with employees, suppliers, customers, all of that. Communities where it operates. Look at this, where it operates. In Bengaluru, you need to look at the employees, the suppliers, the customers. Are their interests being met? Yes. Everyone is getting a fair pay, fair working hours, no problem. Okay. There is a policy in place. Xinjiang, none of these. Okay. It's blatant abuse. So government deals with the company's leadership, executive pay, audits internal. This is the government side. This is how the government deals with it. The companies should be ethical in their outcome, in their approach, at least from the climate perspective. Okay. So you must have seen, say, a particular soft drink. It will contaminate land water because it has to make the soft drink. Ethical or unethical? Is it following ESG investing? No. If you are contaminating the local groundwater, then the local people, the villagers or whatever the people there are around the factory, their interests are hampered. How is it ESG investing? So this is a concept that you must be aware, okay, from the ethics perspective, because again it's a concept for ethics paper also, but also from the prelims perspective. Absolutely important to know. Okay. And again, something that you can include in your answers. These type of references enrich in an answer. It shows that the person knows what they're talking about rather than beating around the bush for 200 words. All right. Okay. So this is it. Oh, before we wrap up, you have to answer me these questions, guys. I'm not letting you go like that only. Yep. Answer me the questions to these, please, very, very quickly. So, microbeads, like I told you, I've given you the whole story about marine pollution. Yes? So, they are considered harmful to marine ecosystems. Please understand, any concept, any conversation around plastic pollution has to compulsorily include marine pollution. And in this case, UPSC was straightforward in asking about marine pollution. Okay? And which of the organization has prepared the zero draft? Well, you will leave an answer for me in the comment box below, since I have discussed about the whole concept of whatever the zero draft is and which organization has done it. All right. Okay. So on that note, it's a wrap for today, the 5th of June, World Environment Day. Until I see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. IST. Please leave me a like and a comment if you like this analysis. If you like any particular topic to be discussed, I'm all up for it. Leave me a like or a comment and I will get back to you. If you want to reach out to me personally, I have discussed my email ID also in this video. And I will be setting up good coder. Bahut acha answer. Easy. See, now you will remember it, guys. I know for sure. Okay. Now you will remember what plastic pollution is and what zero draft is at least for 3-4 months before you have to again revise it. Okay. So tomorrow morning we'll meet. And if there's any particular topic that you'd like me to discuss, no, guys, please let me know. Okay. Specifically from the prelims to the interview perspective, we'll discuss the end-to-end, everything. 40 minutes related to the current news, we'll do it. Okay. And yeah, make sure you subscribe this, please. Because again, if I don't show up on your recommendations, how will you meet me tomorrow morning 9 a.m. Right?